And I'm so grateful to be with you on this Sunday. Do you know I've been speaking here over 2 years? Wow, I just looked it up. It was March 31st, 2019. I first got to come to this beautiful community. And I'm so grateful for the love, for the support, for the fellowship, for the vibrancy of this beautiful community. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. So I didn't realize that our theme for May, I just looked it up, is Holy, Holy Uprising. So holy with a W and then holy with an H, uprising. And my talk matches perfectly. I'm talking about tipping your spiritual apple carts. You ever have your apple carts tipped? Anyone? Me? You know, you're in a hurry to get somewhere and you're in front of the slowest car on the road. Anybody? And we start to lose our spirituality a little bit, or you're in the 15 item line at the grocery store with your 12 items and the person in front of you's got 20. I don't know, that's mine. That really gets me, you know. But sometimes we have bigger things show up in our lives, right? That tend to pull us away from our center. And I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about disruption today. And I'm going to talk about why it shows up, what it looks like, how we can move through it with more grace, more peace, and with a higher vision of what's coming through. And then look for the gift. Every disruption has some higher ground, some expansion for us. And that's why we're going through it. That's why we're going through it. So you might have noticed I'm standing up for the talk. I've noticed that I talk better when I stand. Anybody process kinesthetically, like you got to move and your brain works better? That's me. So that's what you get today. I'm going to try that today with everybody. So I've had a tough week. On Monday, I had to send my precious Max of 17 years, my little fur baby, over the Rainbow Bridge. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Anybody fur baby parents here? Cats, dogs, rat? Yeah, it was tough. But I'll tell you, leading up to that, there was some major disruption that ended up being a gift for me. 2 weeks prior to Max's transition, he wasn't looking good. And so I took him to my vet in Elk Grove. And they said, oh, it's just his teeth are bothering him. Here's some antibiotic. So I went home, gave him the antibiotic, took a nap, woke up, and he had thrown up. He looked worse. And now it's 8 o'clock, so I have to go to the animal hospital. The only one I could find was in El Dorado Hills. So there I am, taking Max, driving fast over to El Dorado Hills. They take him in, and you have to wait in the car. And then the vet calls me, and he says, you know, Max has a tumor on his liver. It's pretty big. And he's anemic. She said, we're looking at a hospice situation with him. And my heart just broke. It just broke. I had no idea he was that sick. So I took him home. 2 days later, my other dog, I have 2 dogs. I come home. She's throwing up. She's shaking. I'm like, what's wrong with her? And I couldn't get her into the Elk Grove vet. So now I'm back at the animal hospital. 2 visits in 1 week. 2 visits. Yeah. I'll be putting out my GoFundMe page to pay for my vet bills. It was crazy. So they take her in there, and the doctor calls again and says, well, she's going to be fine. She got into something. She's already doing better. I'm like, I was glad to hear that. But she has a really bad ear infection, and she had a cut on her cornea. So I got some really good medicine for her. And then I'm waiting for them to bring Maggie back out to me. And I'm thinking, animal hospital twice in 1 week. Whoa, disruption. Talk about disruption. And I was working on this talk, and I thought, well, what is coming through? What's coming through? What message or higher ground is coming through for me? I mean, I know dog is God spelled backwards. I mean, it's some big major burning bush sign trying to get through, you know? And I thought about Max, and he had been to that Elk Grove vet several times. They never diagnosed the tumor. And Maggie had been there multiple times too for different things, but they never gave her the right medicine for her ears. And what I realized is I was getting the gift of better care for my dogs, and the gift to know that my time was short with Max, but it took a disruption. I had to do something different. to get this information, this higher ground to come in, because I'd still be going to Elk Grove. I go to Elk Grove because they're affordable. And the irony is I end up at the animal hospital for better care. And so this disruption actually provided an amazing gift for me to treasure my time with Max before he made his transition and to prepare myself. I ain't even had no idea he was on his way out, So sometimes it's helpful to look at disruption and see what's trying to come through. So today I'm going to talk about what disruption is, why and how it shows up, how we can get some support when we're experiencing disruption. And you might be experiencing some disruption right now in your life. And the gifts, the higher ground that comes from this disruption. Deepak Chopra says every great change is preceded by chaos. Chaos. We have a lot of chaos in the world right now. So I know there's great change coming for all of us. The definition of disruption that I'm working with is an event or condition intended to move us from complacency to action, right? Complacency to action. I was really complacent about where I took my animals for their care, but now I'm taking different action because of this disruption. Because we tend to be creatures of comfort, right? We even have memes, don't rock the boat. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We just tend to stay in our everyday kind of consciousness and routine until disruption shows up. And sometimes it's in the form of something that breaks your heart open. We saw people marching for racial injustice, for people to wake up to racism during a pandemic. People were out in the streets, couldn't stop that disruption, right? We knew we had to turn up our voices to wake people up. So sometimes we're broken open that way. And then sometimes we need to bring disruption to a situation where we have to speak truth or maintain a healthy boundary with someone. I work a lot with parents in spiritual counseling who have to work with, deal with their adult children who sometimes have an entitled behavior towards them. Right? And they have to speak a hard truth with their children to maintain a boundary and integrity. Yes. Anybody ever have to do that? Yeah, it's not easy, but it's necessary and it's powerful. And this kind of disruption comes to heal us, to bring expanded consciousness. But sometimes disruption just pops out of nowhere. Like I felt like COVID just showed up out of nowhere. Anyone? Like it just showed up on the doorstep and I'm hearing, what, I can't go to work? What, I gotta wear a mask? Like it was just out of the blue. So sometimes this disruption comes just in on us, whether it's a disaster, a pandemic, an illness. Endings and beginnings can be very disruptive, right? Shifts in relationship. We've had a lot of divorces during COVID, a lot of people going through disruption. Sometimes the disruption is a shift in your relationship to self. Right? When you start to heal, you start to realize that self-care needs to have another level, and that can be disruptive, especially to people around you who you might have to tell no to, right? For your self-care, that can be disruptive. Innovation can be disruptive. Anyone have the Apple phone? Remember the button? Remember the button on the Apple phone and then it went away? And I went, where's the button? I couldn't turn my phone on. I couldn't move to any screens. It was very disruptive. And sometimes disruption shows up as an awakening of consciousness. In New Thought, in this teaching, we teach you that all thought is creative, influential, and that you are at the center of your power to co-create a life. And while that sounds really great, when things aren't going well, we can start to judge ourselves. It can feel disruptive. You mean I can't blame the devil anymore, right? I can't blame conditions, right? I have to go within. That awakening can be disruptive to our lives. We can have a crisis of consciousness. And the other disruption I want to mention, and I really want to focus on because we're spiritual people, we like peace, we like harmony, but sometimes we need to enter into conflict. Conflict just drops the energy in the room, right? Because sometimes that conflict is the only vehicle that will bring up from the depths of what needs to be seen and healed. Sometimes that conflict has to break things so that they can really be put together in a stronger and better way, right? But I'm a peacekeeper. I don't like conflict. I got any peacekeepers in the room? Anybody? Come on, show me who you are. I know. And what I want to tell you about me as a peacekeeper, my experience, I don't know if this is yours, but this is mine. When I'm in a group and there's disharmony, I feel it in my body. It feels like pain. And so I'm now trying to restore peace, not for them, for me. So I feel better. And then I'll take on the balance of the energy, whatever it is. If I'm out to lunch with a group of friends and another 20 bucks has got to go in the pot, I'm digging in and I'm throwing it in. I don't want people to be unhappy because I'm going to feel it. But here's what I've learned, and it's been a hard lesson, is that avoiding conflict and you paying the bill, the balance of the energy, takes away from you. This is the way Cheryl Richardson puts it. She says, if you avoid conflict to keep the peace, you start a war inside yourself. And my wars have looked like ulcers, diverticulitis, depression. And so I have now made it my goal to get comfortable with being uncomfortable around conflict and to look for the healing that's seeking expression through this unfolding. And that's what I would offer my peacekeepers in the room. We can do this. I'm going to give you some more tips around this. So why does disruption show up? It shows up to bring something new that otherwise would not exist. I mean, think about it. The seed for the plant to exist has got to disrupt the earth. It's got to break it apart for that new creation, right? Well, we don't like the disruption. We don't want the breaking apart. But we can't have the gift, the expanded consciousness, the new thing, unless this happens. You know, Clayton Christensen with Harvard Business School, this is what he says about disruption. He says, a disruption displaces the status quo, or what is, and produces something new and more efficient and worthwhile. He says it is at once destructive and creative. It's destructive and creative, right? Because nature abhors a void. It's not just going to take something away, it's always going to fill it in. And we have these two dynamics coming together when we experience disruption. You know, and Ernest Holmes says this about everything that comes into our lives. He says, life will give you the experience needed for the evolution of your consciousness. That includes disruption. For the evolution of your consciousness, not for the evolution of your bank account. I know that. I've been twice to the animal hospital. That was a big amount of money. Not for the evolution of your reputation, not for the evolution of getting more stuff, right? Because spirit, the divine God, is no respecter of the worldly things. Right? And disruption is another tool in its toolbox to expand our consciousness individually and collectively. And it doesn't respect even our bodies, right? Some point those are going to drop away. And it uses everything to expand our consciousness. Why? Because our consciousness is what's eternal. It's what keeps going. That's the real gift when we expand. That's what goes with us throughout eternity. And we've had some gifts. We get some gifts from disruption. Even though there's a price to pay, there's a gift. Like with the pandemic, for instance. We had a lot of unsustainable behaviors going on. And I looked up some of the benefits that have happened since the pandemic. And what we see is people working from home more. Hours that would have spent on the road commuting, they're now at home with their families, taking better care of themselves. People are starting now to eat at home and have a relationship with their food and their bodies. The planet is healing. I hear sea turtles in Florida are having a very good year. There's more sea turtles than they've ever seen. Beaches filled with them. The coral reef is healing. Our forests are healing. Right? We needed this expansion in our consciousness. Our hygienic practices, we didn't have a cold season. I don't think I saw anyone who had a cold, right? Because we're wearing masks or social distancing. And I'm seeing a connection, a oneness that we have that we didn't have before. You know, I used to hate to go to the grocery store. I don't know anybody like to go to the grocery, but after the pandemic started, people started to see each other again. You know, before I'd get cut off with a basket or, you know, people just be unconscious, I'd be invisible. But now people see each other with an awareness that what's happening to me might affect you and what's happening to you might affect me. We're seeing our interdependence. And we know we've needed this for so long. Yes? Amen? Yes. So you know me, I like to teach through story. So you're going to get a story. I believe we think in stories, we live in stories, and we learn in stories. And I'm going to share with you a very disruptive period of time in my life. A level of disruption I never imagined I would ever have to navigate or take on. And it challenged me to my core. And within it, I'm going to share with you two types of disruption, endings and beginnings, because every new beginning is some endings. Every ending is another beginning, right? You have to have an ending before you can have a beginning. And I'm going to talk about conflict. So my story starts with what I call a fun fact about myself. Some people here know this about me, some do not. You may find this fact disruptive, and wherever you are with it, that's fine. I am a trans man. What that means is I came into the world as Michelle, assigned the gender of female, and I transitioned my gender in my early 40s. And that transition was not really voluntary, I have to be honest. It more was born out of the pain of disruption. It started with a very disruptive event in my 40s where I got my heart broken. I fell in love, that deep, you know, that deep love. You got the rose-colored glasses on, you're seeing forever. And then she sent me a Dear John or a Dear Michelle letter at this time to break up with me. And what she said in the letter rocked me to my core. She said, I would marry you in a heartbeat if you were a man. And what I realized at that moment, she didn't see me. In fact, nobody in the world really saw me. And what I began to realize is that I was living an unauthentic life in every area. You know, I wanted to speak, I wanted to teach, and every time I saw myself up on the stage and people looking at Michelle, they weren't seeing me and I couldn't do it. How could I tell people to live authentically and I wasn't? So I had a crisis of consciousness, I had awakening that I couldn't move forward anymore. It wasn't going to be any kind of life I wanted to live until I let people really see me. And so I began the transition, I began the journey, and it led to the greatest gift of my life. And it's not the transition that was the gift. And I'll tell you more about that. So, endings and beginnings. I had to end my life as Michelle and begin my life as Mitch. It felt like a mountain too high. How do you do that? Every area of my life was going to be touched. And as a private person, like I have to tell people this stuff. And so what was really great about this time period and what I think was synchronistic, as I was going through foundations, I was learning about a power for good that I could partner with, this divine mind that could be with me on this journey. Because I'll tell you, there's no handbook on how to do this. There's no blueprint on how to change your gender or 7 steps to your new gender. It does not exist. It's all custom made. It's all a custom journey. But I was grateful for this teaching because I knew now that I wasn't alone. Even if it felt like a mountain too high, there was a power for good with unlimited wisdom, unlimited influence, unlimited power, and that loved me no matter what I looked like, no matter who I was. And this fed me on my journey as I moved through my transition. And one of the big challenges was like, how do I tell my spiritual community? Do I put it in the church bulletin? Like, no, you know? And so I was communing with the divine, and the divine kept saying, just let it unfold organically. And at the time, I was in a 10-week class. So I started as Michelle and I finished as Mitch. And so things were changing throughout the weeks. People saw my hair get shorter. People started referring to me as Mitch. They thought it was a nickname. And on the last day of class, my instructor, who knew it was up, used a male pronoun with me. And the whole class stopped and gasped and said, oh, that's what's going on. And at the end of class, everybody got to share. And so the first woman that shared, she said, I'm so glad that you're transitioning. She's all, I thought there was something wrong with my sexuality. I'm a straight woman and I find you attractive. And then a gay man professed he had a crush on me. And then another woman said that she found me attractive. This kind of unfolding of this news happened in a way I could never make happen. But I can make welcome in my trust walk and journey with the divine. So I know that if you're facing a mountain too high right now, get with God, get with the divine, get with his power for good. It will feed you, it will go out before you, and it will prepare a way. Amen? Now, the journey wasn't all unicorns and rainbows, as you can imagine. There was conflict. You know, the biggest resistance I got was not from the straight community. It was actually from the LGBTQ community. There were some gay men that would love to make jokes, inappropriate comments about my transition. And the most painful was a community I used to belong to, the lesbian community, now didn't think it was a thing to transition, wouldn't use my male pronouns, dismissed me, discredited me. That hurt. That was hard. But what I did is I got support from other communities. I went and found a transgender support group. I went to my spiritual community that loved me no matter what was going on with me. I got some new sets of friends, right? I got support. I got community. And that helped carry me through some of this criticism and some of this resistance. You know, at work, I'd be passing somebody in the hallway, because you got to tell people at work, right? And sometimes somebody I would normally talk to is all the way on the other side of the hallway as I'm passing them now, not saying anything, as if being transgender is catching. You know, all of these awkward, weird, hard experiences. But when I went to my community, I felt seen, I felt safe, I felt loved, and I felt supported. But what was the gift? The gift. So many gifts of this really difficult journey. I feel like I'm more resilient than I've ever been. I have a deeper relationship and trust of the divine to carry me through things that feel really hard. I got the gift to finally be myself and be seen. But the biggest gift, the most amazing gift, was my new renewed trust and faith in people to love and accept me just as I am. I wouldn't be able to share this story with you if I hadn't gotten that gift. I was a very private person before my transition. I kept everyone 2 arms lengths away. I was a hard person to know. This gift empowered me and broke me open in a powerful way. And the person that finalized this, that really brought it for me, I want to share with you. Her name is Julie. And she was a coworker of mine. And so being that I'm transitioning, I have to tell people, because, you know, I'm going to be walking into the men's bathroom, right? You know, you have to tell people, you have to say something. So I pulled in my coworkers one at a time. After the shock and awe, each one of them said this: who's going to tell Julie? And I said, I know, I don't know. I don't know who's going to tell Julie. So you got to understand, Julie's old fashioned. She was a school teacher, a little naive. Like if you told an off color joke, she wouldn't get it. And she was a woman of strong opinions. You know, when the gay marriage bill was coming through, she told everyone she didn't believe in gay marriage. So everyone was really concerned. Like, how was she going to take this news? I always imagine people were in the back room drawing straws for who's going to tell Julie. But I remember exactly where I was when I knew she knew. I was at the front counter. I was talking to a coworker, and I heard tap, 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 tap. And I turned to look, and it's Julie. She's coming right at me, arms open wide, saying, I'm so happy for you. And she throws her arms around. And in that moment, something broke within me. I couldn't have that distrust anymore. If someone like Julie could love and accept me, even though I know she didn't understand it, that gave me great hope for every relationship I was going to have from there forward. So what I want you to take away from this is to know that disruption does not come to harm you. It comes to heal you. And sometimes in the only way that it can. So if you're facing some disruption right now, I urge you to look for the gift, to partner with the divine, to get into meditation and discussion with it. It will carry you and find support. You have this beautiful community, CSL Davis, that will love you right where you're at, no matter what you're going through. No matter what it is, if it's a bankruptcy, maybe it's a divorce and he said and she said, they're not going to get in that condition. They're just going to love you, see you, support you, bring you to higher ground. That's what this community does. And it's powerful. Let them. You can trust them. And what I know is if you're facing a mountain too high, maybe there's something within your heart that wants expression and you're worried that people are going to judge you. Maybe you're an engineer who wants to paint or an attorney that wants to take pictures of flowers. That's what's in your heart. That's part of your authentic expression. Give it to the world. Let the judgments fall where they will. Because here's the thing, that level of disruption has come to heal the world. And it's my deep hope and prayer that this message has helped come heal some part of each and every person that hears it. Because at some point, we all feel different. At some point, we're always afraid to show some piece of ourselves, that we may be rejected or not accepted. The fear is greater than the reality, and we can trust the love that's in each of our hearts to show up for each other. Amen. I want to leave you with this beautiful quote from Muji. He's a Jamaican spiritual teacher. He says, "You are human and divine. Your human troubles help you discover your divine nature." Blessed be. Amen. Thank you.